One of the most important things we can do to make American aviation more sustainable is increase the supply of American-grown, American-made sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF. SAF presents an incredible opportunity to support a critical industry in our nation's heartland. Policies that grow sustainable aviation fuel sources stemming from America's agricultural bounty represents a true win-win solution that supports domestic farmers and blenders while also reducing our carbon footprints across all modes of transportation. However, as has already been discussed, success is far from guaranteed. I'm troubled that outdated and inaccurate environmental models may prevent America's corn and soybean farmers from being a part of comprehensive climate solution. That is why I strongly believe that the forthcoming FAA reauthorization must require the federal government to use the most up-to-date life cycle emissions model, such as Argonne National Lab's GREET model, that accurately consider crops, land uses, and carbon reduction practices in the United States. I mean, for example, ethanol produced in the US using advanced precision farming methods plus carbon capture sequestration is much closer to being net carbon neutral than ethanol from Brazil, where rainforests are being cut down and high carbon emitting inputs are being used. Executive Director Welsh, how important is it to make sure that our life cycle emissions models account for real world crop, land use, and carbon reduction practices to ensure that we don't waste the game-changing potential of SAF to cut emissions by putting American-grown crops to work fueling our aircraft and other vehicles?
Thank you, Senator. This is a very important topic. Ensuring accurate life cycle emissions reductions from sustainable aviation fuels is critical to credibly establishing their environmental benefit. So under the Sustainable Aviation Fuels Grand Challenge that I mentioned, the agencies have defined SAF as those fuels that meet at least a 50% life cycle benefit. And directly to your question, when it comes to measuring the life cycle emissions, it is important to have objective, accurate, clear, credible criteria, and as you mentioned, up-to-date criteria for producers and users to meet. And absolutely, all American-grown crops are potentially eligible feedstocks if they can deliver those emissions reduction benefits and should be considered eligible. Thank you.
Thank you. My second question, it has to do with hydrogen fuels. The Midwestern Hydrogen Partnership estimates that hydrogen could become a $130 to $170 billion a year industry in the United States by 2050. Emerging hydrogen and fuel cell markets present an opportunity to stimulate economic growth in my home state of Illinois, as well as other states, and improve the environmental health for the whole planet. In particular, the Midwest boasts a large manufacturing base that could rapidly adapt to producing products for hydrogen and fuel cell technologies. Mr. Gordon and Mr. Miftakhov, what more can Congress do to reduce barriers towards hydrogen development and help unleash the potential for greener energy and job growth? Let's start with Mr. Gordon.
Senator Duckworth, thank you very much for the question, and I absolutely agree with everything that you said. Look, I think we just need parity right now. The programs are in place for new aviation platforms, but right now it does feel like hydrogen aviation is being excluded. So I'm just asking for parity.
Thank you. Mr. Miftakhov?
And thank you, Senator Duckworth, for the question. From my side, again, it's the other flavor of parity is the setting up the right metrics for success. What might work for some of the ground transport works differently for aviation due to difference in the environmental footprint of aviation because of the high altitude emissions. So some of the combustion of fuels is more harmful for aviation in case of aviation than ground transport, and that needs to be reflected. The fuel cells specifically, or hydrogen electric approach, represents the best of all possible worlds because, and there are multiple third-party studies on this by now, it's 90 to 95% full life cycle abatement of all harmful effects of aviation. And this is the magnitude that we need, because if we continue combusting, even if it's SAF, even if it's a completely net zero carbon fuels, we still have all non-carbon effects of this. And it's actually, combustion is less efficient than the fuel cell-based propulsion. For small aircraft, economically, 3 times worse than fuel cells. For large aircraft, twice as bad, economically, without even talking about emissions. So fuel cells represent a huge opportunity, not just for aviation, but around the all types of transport, but for aviation especially. And we think that the United States leadership in this area will be quite critical for the world's transition.
And thank you. And I recognize Senator Budd for his questions.
I thank the chair. And again, I thank the panel for being here today. You know, North Carolina is a leader in aviation, has been for about 100 years. We like to say that.